Hey guys! First video from my new place, and what better way to inaugurate the new apartment and the new setup than by talking about my old videos.
I try to make my videos as entertaining as possible because I love making them. I genuinely love talking about music and musical movies, and I want you guys to enjoy my videos as much as I enjoy making them. However, I am just one guy. I don't have an entire PR team reading over every script I write, which means that sometimes I make mistakes, whether it be factual errors or jokes that just fall flat.
But the first step to learning from your mistakes is by acknowledging them. So today I'd like to dedicate this video to all the times that I messed up, in this new segment titled Thehappyspaceman Messed Up. Now I'm not going to talk too much about number 10 because, well, I already talked about it in my last video.
And I see that Ryan is wearing more pink than Billy Squire in the Rock Me Tonight video.
Yeah, I forgot to mention this in my review of the first movie, but Ryan gave out some vibes of being happy.
And look, if the character of Ryan were actually confirmed to be gay, that would be cool. Nothing wrong with that. But it doesn't seem like it's intentional.
Yeah, apparently director Kenny Ortega had intended for Ryan to be gay.
I already talked about this at great length in my High School Musical 3 review, but in hindsight, isn't it super obvious? And it makes all the jokes I made in my High School Musical 2 review seem in poor taste.
I guess the reason I didn't think this was intentional was because of two things.
For one, I had read the synopsis of the two sequels while writing my review of the first movie, so I knew that he and Kelsey hooked up in senior year.
And two, let's be real, this is a Kenny Ortega production.
When this man isn't busy making people come off as unintentionally gay, they instead come off as unintentionally incestuous, so you'll forgive me for missing one of the few times it was intentional.
Quick side note, apparently a lot of fans were upset at the Ryan-Kelsey romance in the third movie.
Especially after Ryan's actor Lucas Gray Beale, despite not being gay himself, pushed so hard for gay representation with his character only to have Disney reject it.
Well, one thing Disney didn't have control over? The blooper reels. So, it's kinda canon. Little known fact, on the original album of The Wall, Toni Tenille of the Captain and Tenille fame provided the voice of the groupie.
Can I get a drink of water?
So apparently this wasn't true?
On the song One of My Turns, the groupie is actually voiced by Canadian actress Trudy Young. Toni Tenille did provide vocals on the album, but only on the songs The Show Must Go On and Waiting for the Worms.
I blame this error on the fact that when I made this review, I was primarily using Wikipedia for my research, and would only later on start using other sources like AllMusic or IMDb. Incidentally, that's also why I made this mistake. Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury were notably friends in the 80s, and Jackson said that Hot Space was an inspiration for his own album, Thriller, which is commonly considered one of the greatest albums of all time. So say what you want about Hot Space, but at least it inspires something really good, right? Now, it is true that Michael Jackson and Freddie Mercury were good friends.
And the King of Pop did record with Freddie back in the 80s. In fact, there's a pretty funny story I've heard saying that Freddie didn't want to record more songs with Michael because Michael's pet llama scared him.
But in terms of MJ being influenced by Hot Space for Thriller, there's no proof of that.
It's apparently a pretty common myth among Queen fans, but no, if you look at the release dates of both albums, which were only months apart, it seems more and more unlikely. Hell, Hot Space wasn't even out yet when Michael started recording Thriller. If anything, it seems more likely that he took influence from Queen's previous album, The Game.
We'll probably never know if it's true or false, but in the end, this doesn't change the fact that Hot Space is still a sorely underrated album. But Body Language still sucks.
Looking for attention.
In what comic does Batman do that? I always thought he wanted as little attention as possible. Okay, the line there is Badman, not Batman. And I honestly don't know how I messed that one up.
Gary Chirone's voice is so slurred that it makes half the lyrics incomprehensible, so I had to use lyric sheets to understand what he was saying half the time, which means I would have seen that it says Bad Man.
Though, now that we're on the subject, what the hell was I thinking not including the lyrics in the video itself?
When the lyrics are of key importance to my analysis, you'd think I would, include the actual lyrics? Especially when, as previously stated, Gary Chirone's voice sounds particularly slurred and incomprehensible on this album. Good thing I finally started including subtitles with the song lyrics with my next video, the top 10 silliest Muse lyrics.
And speaking of that video...
What the hell is this? Usually, I try to be as grammatically correct as possible. I mean, my dad used to be an English teacher, so he really hammered good spelling, grammar, and punctuation into me. But occasionally, I still make typos, and while for the most part none of them are too bad, this one is just horrible. Thehappyspaceman? Really? How did I misspell my own name?
Actually, that's not the real question here. The real question is, how did I make that same mistake thrice?
Because I also misspelled it in my Annie review, and my Worst Christmas Songs video over a year later. That's just unprofessional. And I know that it may seem trivial to others, but I value good grammar, dammit, and I will not sleep until I've officially apologized for this.
And now that I have... I don't know, on to number 5, I guess.
The next track, Josephina, starts off with some very pretty acoustic guitar. It seems to be another love ballad like From Afar.
So, I didn't realize when writing this that Josephina was the name of Gary Cherone's mother.
This was when I was first starting to use other sources besides Wikipedia. The thing is, though, it was nearly impossible to find info about any of these tracks or about Gary's personal life. There was nothing about this on AllMusic or Genius, and the only piece of evidence to support this was this tweet from Gary Cherone released on Mother's Day.
What am I supposed to do? Start browsing artists' Twitter pages when making my reviews? I'm just saying, that's a hell of a lot of work.
But yeah, when you listen to the lyrics from the perspective of a boy asking his mom about her life, it does make a lot more sense. Like the line about him knowing her all of his life, but not all of hers.
Still doesn't justify that vocal delivery, though. Yeah, no, that still sucks.
And maybe it's just the fact that the song was written in 1998, we live in a much more paranoid world after 9/11. But I don't think the song would go over so well if it were written today. I mean, it's no wonder the song hasn't been played live since 2000.
Wow, I could not have been more wrong on this one.
It is true that Muse had stopped playing Falling Down by 2001, as they did with a lot of the songs from the showbiz era. However, there's nothing to suggest that it has anything to do with 9/11 more than them just wanting to focus on newer songs. Not only that, but they totally brought it back later on. On their second Law tour in 2012, Falling Down made a return to set lists. I feel particularly stupid about forgetting this because I literally had a video on my computer of them playing Falling Down on said tour. And I don't think it makes my criticism of the lyrics in question less valid.
But still, kinda hard to ignore.
Since then, it's become something of a classic there. There's a fan website, the Swan Archives, dedicated to Phantom of the Paradise that's based in Winnipeg.
Okay, I'll admit, this was just guessing on my part.
I couldn't find anything on the Swan Archives website about where the site was hosted, but since the site had an extensive article about the Winnipeg scene, I automatically assumed that the site was hosted in Winnipeg. But as it turns out, the Swan Archives is actually based in the San Francisco area. Now, some of you may be saying, Spaceman, this fact is trivial. Why are you putting it so high up on your list?
No reason.
It's just that the person who informed me of this mistake was Ari Kahan, the friggin' curator of the Swan Archives website himself.
Shout out to Ari, by the way. Thanks for watching my video, and I appreciate the work you do. Now let's continue.
I know I keep talking about my Van Halen 3 video, but it is my most popular review, and I assume that a large number of the views came after it was featured on the Van Halen news desk. Seriously, the fact that my little video was featured on Van Halen's semi-official website is the coolest thing.
So thanks so much to Van Halen News Desk for featuring me, and thanks as well to all the fans who called out this error.
On this album in particular, Mike is only playing bass on 3 of the 12 tracks. That's only 1/4 of the album where he actually has a presence. Believe it or not, that's Eddie himself playing the bass. His previous bass credits include...
Yeah, Eddie Van Halen did play bass. A lot, in fact.
You can hear Eddie's bass contributions all over Sammy Hagar's solo album, I Never Said Goodbye, as well as on Steve Lukather's self-titled album from 1989. And hey, Eddie's son Wolfgang is currently the bassist in Van Halen, and he had to learn that instrument somewhere. In fact, in a recent interview, Eddie claimed that he had to show Michael Anthony how to play bass.
Though, let's be real, this is Eddie we're talking about. He could easily just be saying that to insult Mike.
And as a guitarist myself, I do realize that it is relatively easy to switch from guitar to bass. In fact, I've often heard it said that most bassists start out wanting to play guitar, with the exception of Geddy Lee, who is clearly more comfortable on doot-doot synthesizers. My problem was more with the fact that on the album, his bass is still practically inaudible, even on the tracks where he was playing bass instead of mic.
But as for whether or not Eddie can play bass, yeah, no, I got that one wrong.
In fact, I even put an annotation on the video itself apologizing for that. Not that most of you would know that, of course, since this was before YouTube got rid of annotations.
Now, number 1 is an entire video. So, little known fact about this video.
I created this back in junior year of high school for an assignment in film class. I'd been watching a lot of Nostalgia Critic and figured I could make a film review like that for the class, so I created this channel separate from my main one to prevent myself from getting copyright strikes. However, I soon realized that I had a lot of fun with it and liked making reviews, so I started making more and this channel soon took form. This is why that first review is so different from anything I made later.
Because yeah, it's really bad.
I got so many things wrong in this video that it's not even funny. For example, Kenichi never actually saw that Tima was a robot when he first met her, he just saw that she was glowing. I asked why Tima learned English so quickly, forgetting that it was probably just because of her programming. It totally flew over my head that Tima didn't have a crush on Kenichi and actually just imprinted on him as her father. Some people criticized my choice of saying that the 1927 film had better effects than the anime, and while it's hard to compare the two since one is animation and the other is live action, the anime technically does have better looking effects. Also, some people had a problem with me praising the Giorgio Moroder cut of Metropolis.
But screw it, it's my video and I personally think that his cut of the movie is really good. If you have a complaint with that, please file it here.
Though, while we're talking about Giorgio Moroder, let's talk about how I couldn't pronounce anybody's name right in this video.
The Giorgio Moroder what way?
Yeah, thankfully I learned how to Google name pronunciations before I reviewed Annie and had to talk about Quvenzhané Wallace. God, I made so many mistakes in my Metropolis vs. Metropolis video that I actually made a joke about it in a later video.
And this is coming from a guy who has never made a single fault in his life. Except for all these from the Metropolis review. Now, in fairness, this was my first ever review.
And you may think I'm being too hard on myself. After all, very few people strike gold in their first attempt at doing something.
What bothers me is how damn popular this video is.
Before my Van Halen 3 review, this was my most viewed video on this channel, and even today is my 5th most popular review. Which is baffling because it's of such low quality, and every time I receive a comment, I always feel like shouting,
Hey! What the hell are you doing? I have newer videos, you know? They're way better than this! Watch those instead! Anyway, I hope you guys liked this video. Did I make any other mistakes over the years? Tell me in the comments below, and I'll catch you next time.